Yeah, welcome guys. Welcome to our second ever AMA session. Thanks for joining us. It's been such an incredible week. Genesis has been off the charts in every manner of speaking. Thanks to everybody who's here joining us. Dirk, Idan, how's it been for you guys? Tell us a little bit what your experience has been this week.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being on this webinar or Zoom AMA today, which we have here. We're also very, very stoked about this week. It was very, very active also for us. Keep on, every day we've been looking, what the community is saying, to make sure that, the events run smoothly. We fired up a new release in between. So we were quite happy, how everything has turned out. And also, as you probably have seen, we also bringing in lots of new users in currently because we started to ramping up a little bit our marketing. The ones of you who are using the Brave browser, for instance, we run a small ad there, testing out some things. So yeah, you will see us more across the web going forward because we are ramping up, because we think, we can do this now. We do this particular right now in focus in the US and UK, but we are also doing some stuff in Germany and France as well as now. So this is all just the beginning. Yeah, we are very happy that we continue, developing, the product. As we know, we launched open beta early this year. We are still in beta. This still will take on for a little bit more time because we want to add more features to it. So we're still in beta. We always say that, but we will always continue to follow our three pillars. Let's say the strategy of Upland, right? Which is play. You've seen that. You can do lots of things already. You can go ahead treasure hunting. You have the piñatas. That's the first pillar, play. The second pillar is then where we say basically it's business, what is coming now, right? Or meaning earn, right? You will have the opportunity just not earning money, by flipping properties, but we will eventually want you to run businesses in Upland. We have lots of about that, a little bit later today. And then the third pillar is actually community or connect. You're already doing this in a very great manner on all these channels. And, thanks to Lars, a great moderator here. We chime in here and there, right? We love, that everyone is super active, but we will also have features in the game we'll be talking about today a little bit later, right? Where you actually can, lift the community directly in the app. So welcome, everyone.
Idan, how has Genesis Week been for you? Are you satisfied with everybody's participation in the community?
I think we've all been overwhelmed with the response and the results. I think the community is engaged, and I think we try to design this week so everybody will have something to find in it. And I think the results were great. We had a couple of events that anybody could participate in. It doesn't require to be a huge kind of like stake in Upland for that. And those went very well. We also have some competitions still running on that are geared towards people that are owners and traders, and a lot of these events now were more about trading and less about just straight out buying, maybe other than Occupy No Valley. So I think the results are great. I hope the community feels the same way about it. So far, it's been a hell of a week.
Awesome. So I guess let's jump into some questions. We had quite a few questions submitted. Actually, I looked at it a little bit before the AMA began, and the majority of the questions were submitted regarding either property development, cities and neighborhoods, or businesses. No surprise there, right? I think these are probably the most anticipated features of Upland in the very near future. So let's start with property development a little bit, I guess. And here's our first question. Will a person have to purchase a permit to build either a primary residence or business establishment? Idan, that's to you.
Yeah, so as we detail in the roadmap, whenever you build a building in Upland, so the building itself does not require a permit or a license. And once that construction is complete, so construction requires both apex and time to complete. Once that's complete, it can be used as it can be used by default for residents. So it does not require a license for that. And anybody can set their primary residence to any type of building, whether they own it or they rent it. So that does not require a license either. Now, transforming a structure into a business will require a business license. So I hope that kind of like covers all the options.
Okay. And I mean, rolling into the next question, do we know in terms of actual time, how long it would take to build a residence or a business? And if there is any way to accelerate that process?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to make sure, I know that not all of the questions will be able to answer in full detail. The reasons for that is that we are always playing around and testing out different models that tie into the economy of the game. And as long as we don't have the final results, we're not going to be able to communicate the final numbers. But again, the cost of constructions will relate to the size of the structures that are being built, and so will the time. And again, if we're looking for exact numbers, we cannot communicate that information yet, just because it's still being modeled out.
So just to re-emphasize that again, guys, we're doing our best to answer your questions, but, bear with us if we don't have, a complete rule book or logbook ready for whatever concepts you were asking about. So, okay. So regarding the building of the structures, do we have something concrete on that yet, or should they wait a little bit until we have something more for them?
I mean, I suggest to wait a bit. I can tell you that the relation between the cost of building and the cost of properties will not necessarily mirror real life ratios for what you would expect there. So again, this is a very, very, very crucial part of the economy. We do have numbers. I do not want to share that before we finalize them, because that would create a potential for, if we require to make changes in the future before we release the feature, I don't want that to create some kind of like a backlash of why did that change. So I apologize if that doesn't satisfy as an answer, but we just need a bit more patience for that.
I think the community totally understands. They know how we do things at this point, and they know that it will, turn out for the best for them eventually. What about the class of a building or a structure? How is that determined? Is it solely based on region, or is there something else that influences it?
Sure. So first of all, the purpose of building classes is primarily for visual reasons. So we don't want to create like, the boring effect that every building looks the same as each other. So class will primarily be about the visuals. So we plan to roll out with 3 different classes, and in the future, probably there's going to be lots more. And then the designation of classes per specific regions, those can be, those can be enforced as kind of like to create this a bit of a characterization, like special characteristics of different areas of each city. Maybe cities will look a bit different from one another, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the primary reason for classes of buildings is visual, designation, and to be able to distinguish different types of buildings from each other.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just on the same topic, one more question would be, how close to real life do we intend to make the business and property development? The question asks specifically, for example, about zoning restrictions. So if there's a large plot of land in the middle of San Francisco, can it potentially be used as farmland? Just as case in point.
Okay, so maybe let's break this question down to a couple of different questions. So as long as land designation goes, so we make the distinctions between, and maybe going back to the 2020 roadmap originally, we make the distinction between urban areas, farmlands, and wastelands. So there's not going to be a situation where an urban area like San Francisco will be designated as a farmland. So that's not going to happen. There's going to be a clear separation between that. Having said that, again, we're not going to roll out land development with restrictions for zoning. But I think one important factor is, again, we're constantly looking for what kind of areas of the economy can we delegate to the community for self-governance. And this also ties into primary residence, because again, as we mentioned in the development roadmap, we want to enable people to participate in votable resolutions. That's one of the things that primary addresses will be used for. And things like deciding whether or not a specific zone in the city can host a specific type of business. These are certainly types of things that we can delegate out to the community. This is not things that we want to enforce on a city by means of a decision. So maybe to summarize that, when we launch land development, there's not going to be such restrictions, but we may delegate these types of restrictions to the community as kind of like this business licenses and development is being evolving in Upland.
Mm-hmm. We also had a few questions kind of around the same topic, and that has to do with the land parcels themselves. So can you tell us a bit about the structures in relation to the land parcels? So if you have a land parcel that's, you know, weirdly formed or that's incredibly small or something like that, does that mean that they can only contain certain types of structures?
Yeah, so the answer to that is very basic. So each building is gonna have a 3D instance in the wall. That means it will take an X amount of up squares according to its shape and size, and together with kind of like a required margins it will have in order to fit into a parcel. And so, and when you take that, that pretty much dictates which parcels it can fit into. When we roll out, we're going to roll out with 3 different sizes of buildings. It doesn't mean that there may be other types of buildings in the future that are going to be either smaller or bigger than the initial 3 sizes. But at the end of the day, there is going to be a minimal kind of like area that is required for the minimal size of a building. So yes, there may be a scenario where a certain property cannot fit a specific type of building or any building for that matter. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you still cannot develop the land, right? So again, buildings are not going to be the only things you're going to be able to do with properties. You're going to be able to, you know, put gardens and courts and other things that can fit into the properties that are not buildings. So maybe make the distinguishment between land development and, you know, erecting structures on it.
Okay. Brian asks in the chat here, but how small of an up squared will still be buildable at the start? I imagine that the answer to that, according to what you just said, is, you know, you have to have, in order to build a parcel that's at least as big as the smallest template structure side, at least at first, right?
Correct, with required margins. So you know, the margins may be, you know, 1 up square around the building, maybe a bit more. Again, we still have not determined the final numbers for all of those aspects. It's still a part of the model that we are working on.
Okay, and then one last thing regarding the property development before we move on to talk about businesses a little bit. One last person asked about the height of a structure. Will that have any influence?
Yeah, so again, it kind of like a bit relates to to my previous comments. So rolling out, there's not going to be any restriction that has to do with height. But again, these are some of the things we can delegate to the community to decide for themselves. So the community can decide, for example, that at some point that in San Francisco, only the financial district can build skyscrapers, right? Whereas, you know, residential neighborhoods may not. So height restrictions is one of the things we would want to eventually delegate to the community.
Okay, terrific. Let's see what else we got here. So let's move on to businesses a little bit. Dirk, why don't you take the following one? Will there be a limited number of individual business licenses available for purchase? And if so, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
So we cannot, you know, say exactly how many overall businesses there will be, because obviously there will be, you know, an increasing number in general in terms of numbers of businesses. You know, we announced the first businesses Uplanders will be able to run. And then it depends on the nature of business, right? So, for instance, when you want to run a coffee shop as such, then you will probably have, you know, I'm just grabbing a number because we haven't defined those yet, right? But there will be maybe 100 or 200 coffee shops right across the city. While there will be maybe some others like a virtual art gallery or maybe real estate agency, which we had before, maybe there will be a little bit less. However, those numbers are not perfectly defined. We're currently evaluating that because it has to fit into our overall economic model that everything is working out, you know, in a very smooth way, so that it's you know, not somehow threatening, you know, the stability of the economy.
And
maybe just maybe just
sure,
one thing to add. So that limitation is going to be per locale, right? So it's not like a global thing in Upland. It's going to be per either city or county where each of these businesses operate. and you know, different cities maybe have different natures and different liquidity, and that would be adjusted accordingly.
Yeah, so to give you one concrete example also, right? So this, I mean, you will be able to run, let's say, once we open up New York, of course, you will be able to run a coffee shop, right? In also, there was a question also, how many, you know, when I'm an Uplander, how can I run multiple properties in a city, right? But we foresee it actually exactly that way. Will be able to run one type of business in the city, but you can maybe run the same kind of business then also in another city or another region.
Will the property type affect the type of business that can be run on it?
Not so. The way we see it, and Idan mentioned it before, right? So it's very much, you know, ties into what the community, you know, we want to really delegate that to communities. They want that they are able to decide what kind of businesses they can run in their area. Maybe some communities decide, you know, to have, you know, some certain just only coffee shops, and others might decide, you know, maybe just art, maybe an art district where, you know, there's a lot of art galleries. So, but we want to delegate that to that exactly decision more to the community and not make decision by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. What about the reselling of business licenses? Will that be a thing?
Yes, people will be able to. There will be a market for that going forward.
And will it also be on a first come first served basis in terms of the types of the license that you can acquire?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So we're currently looking into different models, how we're going to distribute those licenses. You know, obviously we don't want to have, you know, hard competition. You know, that, you know, Will signs in the first in the morning, gets all, you know, the most interesting licenses. So we always want to see that, make it very transparent and fair, so we have an even distribution across the community.
Mm-hmm. All right. And we had another question, kind of related, unrelated, but one person asked, can you provide the finer details of how each business type could earn UPEX?
So it's very much like in the real market economy, right? Since there will be different types of businesses with different types of business models at the end of the day, right? So you will have a chance to investigate, you know, what is the best for your business. You have to think like an entrepreneur in a certain sense, right? So that means, you know, maybe you want to, and that depends also on the market and demand, right? In some places you might be selling, you know, some virtual goods for a higher price, and in some places you may be for a lower price. So that's everything is driven by market and demand at that point, and what you believe, you know, how you want to sell it to your potential buyers.
George Rubio.
Maybe just to
Sure.
expand on that. So, but having said that, obviously, so that relates to how individuals that run businesses can kind of like make that succeed or not. But each business that we envision comes with its own opportunity to make UPEX. So, for example, if you run an Explorer shop, a block Explorer shop, you can have your own creations uploaded and approved by Upland, and then sell them for a profit of UPEX in Upland, or also maybe for Fiat as well. So that's in the case of Explorer shops. If you run a nursery, right, you can you know, run an inventory of plants that you sell out, for example. So each one of these businesses that we identified, and this does appear on the roadmap, has its own thought out you know, minimal business model where that gives the opportunity for the owner to earn UPEX. Now, it's up to the owner at the end of the day to run that business efficiently and profitably, and, you know, to advertise it, to market it in the community, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's stick with you for a second, Idan. You know, we made the connection between City Hall and the business licenses in the past, you know, in several documents that we published and several chats. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I guess start maybe by telling us about, will City Hall have functionality beyond the business licenses in the future? And then if you can, maybe tell us a bit more about City Hall in general from what we do already.
Yeah, so City Hall will have functionality, and again, it ties back a bit to previous comments. So anything that has to do about local governance, that will happen in City Hall. So if down the road we have votable resolutions, that's where you would go to kind of like cast your vote and see kind of like the upcoming resolutions, etc. But when we launch City Hall, its primary functionality is going to be around managing business license. That will be basically the marketplace for the business license. So that's where people, Uplanders can acquire a license or trade a license, put it up for sale, make an offer for a license, etc., etc. And then I think we had also a question about the location of City Hall. So City Hall in San Francisco will be kind of like minted where the San Francisco City Hall currently is. So it will be, so in the case, at least in the case of San Francisco, it will be kind of like per the real world City Hall in San Francisco. And that will be the first kind of like structures that people are going to be able to see in Upland. So we do have a City Hall model for City Hall. And when people, when it appears on the map, people will be able to go in and kind of like interact with the interface. I think we gave a visual hint for how that may look in the roadmap. So people can imagine how that's going to play out.
Great. By the way, did we already discuss whether or not or what the requirements will be to get a business license? Will there be requirements, and do we know what they are yet?
Yeah, so first of all, the requirement is you have to be a pro-level Uplander, which I think a lot of players are already at that point, to be able to trade, to either lease or run a business license. And again, I think maybe take a step back and see like and kind of like look at what we're trying to achieve here. This is not about kind of like the platform trying to monetize. This is about trying to do minimal vetting and kind of like get people to run businesses if they're interested in running businesses and if they want to make make it successful. And that's also, you know, part of the reason why we wanted to limit businesses overall with kind of like that semi-fungible token mechanic, because we don't want now people to just, you know, as kind of like a force of habit or because they're bored, to spawn a building and turn it into a cafe without any consequence. We don't want like to spawn like, you know, thousands of the same business without control, because that would make that function almost unusable or like, you know, too common to make sense. So all of these small restrictions are kind of like a way for us to give a better chance for this entire mechanic of businesses to work and work well, and kind of like to set the boundaries of the economy. So I hope that kind of like answers the question.
Yeah, maybe I add in two things. Also, the nature of I think there was a question also in the you know, in the questionnaire which we had out, is so will the businesses will be perpetual, will be recurrent, and how do they look? So I think it depends also a little bit on the business. Will there be some kind of businesses which will own a business license forever, but some of them will be have to be renewed? Again, that's really where it depends on the nature. And what is also quite important when you think about businesses, some business might require some pre-vetting on our side. So once we run maybe some financial services or something, we have to think about, okay, what are the requirements, not just in our Upland world, but since we are somehow always touching, you know, the real world, and, you know, as you know, we are very cognizant about everything what concerning regulation. We're very, very careful that we always comply with everything what is out there. So if we run financial services one day in Upland, we have to see, is that, you know, is there anything we need to know which is, you know, somehow in connection with the real world? And there might be some restrictions which are not necessarily being done by us, but maybe also from the outside. But this is also a little bit further down the road, because we want to start out with the more simple type of businesses.
Fantastic. Let's swivel into talking about cities and neighborhoods a little bit. So Dirk, one of our players asks, just wondering if the next city is ready to go. It looks like San Francisco is being bought up fast. Will there be a Palo Alto expansion of San Francisco or other expansion?
Yes, so I think, I mean, first of all, we made it very public, right, that our next city is going to be New York. And as you know, right, we started preparing that, and we sold the, because you cannot, you know, you have to travel to New York going forward. So there will be a travel mechanic we are going to introduce. You know, we had to actually, for that, you know, in order to have that in place, we had the need to sell actually the parcels of the San Francisco Airport, SFO. And also we sold some of the parcels of the John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. York. So there will be a mechanic where people will be able to travel to New York. We're currently in process of developing that. And then, as we always said, in Q3, we are going to launch New York. New York is going to be in plain vanilla mode. That means most of the stuff is really still happening in San Francisco. However, people who say, I want to start, establishing my first, residence there in a certain sense, is, then they can go and purchase the first properties. But it's important to say, almost all the actions continue to happen in San Francisco. In terms of the properties, we are also seeing right now that lots of those cheaper properties are being sold out. That we have actually, we're currently looking to various ways of, expanding that. So one possible way is that we also go a little bit more south of San Francisco and open up some, adjacent regions in San Francisco where there are some more cheaper properties. So the decision is not finally made. Or we open up a completely, some cities which are a little bit cheaper. The reason why we're doing that is very much, if you think about real life. San Francisco, unfortunately, is very expensive to live. New York is very expensive to live. And as somehow we are related to the real world, there's other areas, especially also in the US, which are, cheaper to live. And that will also be reflected then in the game. And we believe when we want to, continuously onboard new players, as we do actually, we onboard quite a lot right now. They actually, when they just imagine when people coming in for the first time, they want to play around, they want to complete the first collections and so on, and they want to they want to stand the game. They want to necessarily invest, lots of money in the beginning. So that's the reason why we said, okay, let's figure that out, and we'll have some more words in the next few weeks where we say how exactly we're going to do that.
Speaking of borders and cities, one of our players wants to know that they mentioned they noticed explorers drifting north to Fort McDonald and Treasure Island and all sorts of places in the vicinity of the San Francisco Bay Area. Are there any plans of extending the boundaries of San Francisco? We just spoke about that. If so, what direction? And do we want to say anything about these mysteriously drifting explorers at this point?
So actually, this has nothing to do with what I just explained. That's what I just explained was a necessity to have a little bit more cheaper properties in the game again. What you're currently seeing is, it's also not a glitch. It's some kind of surprise we're currently preparing, but shutting my mouth. That's all I can say. We're not announcing that yet, right? There will be some special thing coming up as a small surprise.
Right. Let's see what else we got here. I think a few questions came in. Nico asks, can you give examples of business models for the early start? I'm still a bit confused how a business can run in Upland. Nico, actually, we published a property development roadmap. It's available on Medium, medium.com/Upland. Those will have some additional details for you, I think. And Brian also just asked, this is unrelated, but what about the non-showing properties that exist in real life? Hundreds of polygons for real properties don't show up. Brian, we're actually familiar with that. Several people have reported it. We're looking into it. So we'll have more information about that eventually. Right. So, okay, so here's one. Thank you for introducing the ability to develop our neighborhood into a collection. I'm just wondering if you are planning to introduce the possibility for Uplanders to collaborate, build and improve their neighborhood together as a community. For example, the ability to group purchase a large property together within our neighborhood and utilize this community-owned property as a location, for example, to hold events, auctions, meetings, or some sort of collaborative event.
So in general, and Ilan maybe want to add also something to it. I mean, that's exactly the idea, right? We want, that's the, the third pillar I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, this webinar, is that we actually want people to do some stuff, things together, and then, that they have places where they can meet, right? And so we mentioned coffee shops will be one, right, which can be operated by a single Uplander, but it would be, of course, great if you have some kind of community halls where people can gather together and build something together and things of doing things together and not just communicating.
Yeah, and again, just to be maybe a tiny bit more specific about joint ownership. So joint ownership is something we've always envisioned. And again, there are going to be like layers of how that is introduced. And the first layer is going to be through the mechanics of squads. So when people, we're going to have entities called squads in Upland, as people probably are familiar with that. So it's going to be groups of up to 4 Uplanders that are joining together under kind of like a banner or a name. And the first opportunity for joint ownership will be through squads. Again, it's not going to be immediately when squads are introduced, but that is the greater vision. And so, again, that will be the first type of joint ownership that will be allowed in the game.
Idan, since you brought it up already, do you want to give 1 or 2 more details about squads and anything else we know about it or that we can reveal about it at this point? For example, base gameplay mechanics, maximum team size, something of that nature?
Sure. So squads are going to be teams of up to 4 Uplanders. And again, anybody can team up with anybody. It's up for them to decide. We're going to have a very cool kind of like branding of that. And Jason and the team has been spitting out some great visual and artwork for that. So I think people are going to be, it's going to be really fun to kind of like, team up and create. And again, we're going to introduce this feature in there. So the first layer is going to be just the ability to form squads and group together. And that's going to happen, fairly quickly. So it's one of our upcoming, probably, major sprints is going to be, squads are going to be part of that. And kind of like when that happens, right, we can immediately then introduce leaderboards and challenges that have to do with squads rather than with players. Right, so once people team up, you can expect to start seeing leaderboards and challenges that have to do with squads. And then later on, the concept of joint ownership will be introduced, and some more advanced features for squads. And again, I can just, a couple of things we're thinking about. One of them is kind of like a treasure hunt that happens competitively between 2 squads, for example. So that could be a very cool concept. And as Dirk mentioned later on, community collaboration, joint acquisition, etc.
Nice. Let's swing back to the neighborhoods for a second. One of our players asks or says, hi team, what a fantastic Genesis week. The neighborhood function is really great. I have a question about parks. For example, the Golden Gate Park has its own boundary in the game. Is it possible to make a Golden Gate Park neighborhood, or are parks something special that are reserved for other uses?
Yeah, so I mean, the basic concept that we are again attempting to adhere to is that anything that has an address in the real world you will be able to erect structures on. And I think Golden Gate Park as kind of like an area is a little bit of an exception, because most of it is like areas that don't have specific addresses. So our assumption is that most of Golden Gate Park will not be able to erect structures on it, except for the parts of it that do contain addresses. And the rest of it, for future use, yes, we'll be able to offer that for maybe community ownership, growing plants and parks and courts and fountains, whatever. That would come in later stages of the game, though.
How much will a neighborhood collection bring when the needed development rating is reached?
So as mentioned in the roadmap, this will be a factor. So the threshold for spawning will be preset. So once it reaches a certain score, the collection will spawn. And then the values, as mentioned in the roadmap, the values of the collection, such as the one-time reward, the yield boost, and kind of like the level to which it fits, whether it's kind of like a rare, an ultra rare, or standard, limited, exclusive, etc. This will be determined the same way we determine collections today, which is basically the availability, the kind of like the general availability of the collection. So how many properties are in general there as an availability, and how hard it is and how expensive it is to complete it, so in terms of the market value of the collection. So, but I can assure you all of that will be automatically determined per the same algorithms we use for the current collections. Okay, so you can draw some kind of like insight from the current collections and see kind of like the equivalence there.
Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, will a high development rating boost the bonuses of already existing neighborhood collections like Seacliff?
Yeah, so we're going to treat existing collections as though they've already reached their development rating, whether or not they did. But then once they surpass that and get to the next level of development rating, that would increase their boosts, similar to the way that they will with spawned neighborhoods. I hope that makes sense.
Awesome. Let's do some miscellaneous questions now. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Now that we can toggle on and off marketplace markers, will we at some point be able to toggle on and off other explorers?
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been, we have seen that request coming in a couple of times, and yeah, we'll add that probably, in a future roadmap, that people will be able to do that.
Terrific. Several players have asked, in the future, will there be the option to change a player's login email address?
So I think, again, technically, this is something we can do. I mean, when we review that option, we'll be very cognizant about, making sure how can we prevent people from selling accounts and stuff like that, because obviously that raises some questions about that type of, caveats.
Indeed. What about daily login rewards? We have a question here that says, other games implement a daily login bonus / perk to reward a player for logging in regularly.
Yeah,
but
so
do you expect, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just complete the question.
Yeah, there was just another little piece, but do you expect adding to the game 2 to 5 daily rewards? They're just asking in general,
Sure.
If we would consider something like
sure.
that. Why
the reality is that, like other games, Upland does have the ability to give out daily bonuses, and we have tested that in the past, but we only use it in the context of helping onboard new players, and we're giving that kind of like in the first couple of days of play. And again, this is about trying to create engagement and encouragement in the first weeks. The reason we can't do it in the long run is again because we operate a real economy, and this is just, if we give it every day, this is just pure inflation. And the way we deal with inflation, again, we do have inflation in the economy, and in these stages, it's a good thing. But any inflation that we do, we'd rather gamify it. We'd rather make it fun. We'd rather give out a bonus as a game rather than just spitting it out. To make it sustainable, for the sake of growth and engagement. So again, daily rewards on the long run is not something we'll probably see in Upland. We may see it in the context of onboarding new players.
Separate topic now. Idan, where does the POI information come from?
Originally, this information comes from Foursquare. So if you check, for example, Foursquare.com, it would be identical to the POI that you see in Upland today.
It's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Dirk, this one's to you, I think. Will there be an economy report anytime soon?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. So we plan on publishing more data, so which will help, to understand a little bit further the economy. As you know, the economy is still very much at the infancy stage. So right now, we only have one good in quotation marks, which is property. In the future, we'll have multiple goods. And then, of course, you're going to get a completely different dynamic in terms of, how prices are developing and so on. But we want to go and publish some data. Some of the data, of course, is public because it's anyhow on the blockchain, but not everyone can read it. But maybe want to share some of the data where we currently stand today here in this AMA. So maybe not all of you are aware. So we have roughly 150,000, a little bit more than this, properties in San Francisco overall. and we do have sold about 40,000 so far, right? So 40,000 are owned by players, and actually the rate of ownership and additional ownership, additional users is increasing right now. So that's also one of the reasons we believe we have to start expanding a little bit further beyond that. So at the moment we have roughly 2,100 Uplanders in the game. So that's the rough numbers we're currently having. We're watching the price developments, how much Apex is in the game. And what Idan also mentioned is when we have, for instance, this little sign-up bonus, we have a sign-up bonus, we have sign-in bonus, these kind of things. We always, our main objective is how's the quantity of Apex developing towards, real money through fiat, is that still in a healthy state? And I can assure you, so far, I think we made a good job, but we continuously, injecting some money going forward, right? It's very much like what you see today in the real world, we see that, due to this current situation, governments are injecting lots of money in order, to have economic activity going, but at the same time we will also at a certain time, I want to make that clear, we will also contract how much money we're giving out, right? It has to be also very often the question, right now you get roughly 17% yield when you purchase a property. It's not going to be always like that. We want to make that perfectly clear, right? That might reduce over time. We're doing this right now to jumpstart the economy, but our ultimate goal is that we have velocity in the system. What that means is that people or Uplanders, that they trade between them, right? It's a real economy that we're trying to set up, right? And we, as in quotation mark, the central bank or state or however you want to call it, we actually will move out of that because we strongly believe it should be a market and demand thing. You have to jumpstart it, to repeat myself, right, in the beginning. So economic activity is going on, but then you have to pull out because then it's really where it becomes super interesting for everyone.
Speaking of governments and banks, one of our users wishes to know when Fiat Out is released, how will government taxes be handled? Will there be some sort of easy to download document that shows all trades and profits, or will the information be available in some other way?
Yeah, so as you know, we announced our partnership with Telia, which is a subsidiary of Linden Lab, and Linden Lab itself has developed, let's say, the granddaddy of all virtual worlds, which is Second Life. So, which was very important for us. We're going to be, the first blockchain game allowing Fiat Out. Just to elaborate on that, why we did that with them is because in the US you need to have money transmitter licenses in order to pay out in every state, and if we would have done it ourselves as a new company, we would have, I don't know, but it would have taken us probably 2 or 3 years. And we said no, let's do a shortcut, and that's the reason. And we have a very good relationship with them. We said okay, let's do it together with them. So we and Telia also themselves, it's the first time actually that Linden Lab or Telia allows third-party company to use their existing tool. So we are the first ones, and we are working with them now since we have put out all the regulatory barriers behind us now, which took some time. But now we're in the process of implementing that, and we're very positive that we'll implement it somehow in the second half of the year. That should happen by then.
Maybe it's also
the second part of the question. I forgot was.
I think that they wanted to know if there's some sort of easy to download pre-prepared document.
Yeah, so of course, since we have all those transactions, right? So we just need to prepare that, and you will get something which you can then use, for your own purposes, seeing how much money you've put in and how much money you did put out actually get out. So we'll have some reporting, either through Telia, or we add some of our own things to it.
All right. Maybe it's also interesting to add for the community to understand that Telia, correct me if I'm wrong, Dirk and Idan, but they're a financial subsidiary of Linden Lab. They were created and designed specifically for this purpose of selling, in-game items, and they do have money licenses in almost all of the U.S. states, right? If not all of them, if I'm not mistaken.
All of them without exception.
Right. So it's very important just for our community to know that, you know, we'll make the information available one way or another. It's there, but first and foremost, everything maintains a high level of regulatory compliance, which is, right, one of our top priorities at Upland. Idan, let's talk about the improvements that have been made to treasure hunts lately. Regarding the standard tier, one of our user asks, is the payout random, or is the reward scale, or does the reward scale with however long it takes to actually find the treasure?
Okay, so maybe let's separate it into two questions. So does the price change according to the clock? No, once a treasure is spawned, the price, the award is determined, and it maintains that same value. You know, and then it's up to whether or not it is found by the player. As to the second element, yeah, there is a random element to determining the price, but there is a very, you know, there's a very strict math model that governs this decision of what is going to be the type of the value of treasures that is going to be spawned. And again, obviously, you know, that model determines the kind of like make sure that this function is not just inflating UpX into the world. So yeah, there is some random element, but it's a very strict algorithm for determining those prices.
For sure. What about the new Riot Mode? Some of our friends in the community wish to know, has it already been activated? Has it been utilized? And do we know of any results?
Yeah, so we haven't seen yet a treasure spawned in Riot Mode. I'm not sure though if Riot Mode has been achieved yet or not. And I think that there's a couple of clarifications I want to make here. So first of all, by the way, when we introduced Riot Mode, we started now measuring only the Uplanders that are currently hunting, and not not including the visitors. The reason for that, again, we don't want people to, you know, to just create, you know, to create incentive for people to create fake accounts just for the sake of reaching Riot Mode. So that may have some effect of kind of like the amount of currently hunting players that we're seeing. And the other thing I want to mention, again, Riot Mode was put in there not to be not to be unreachable, right? We want a certain amount of percentages of treasures to be spawned in Riot Mode. And that relates maybe to the entire innovation, like new features with treasure hunts. And the point is that, again, no matter how elaborate our simulations and models are, or no matter how much we think how smart or not smart we think we are, we cannot predict the actual behavior of such a complex system. So that's why when we roll out new features, all of these parameters, you know, you need a little bit of patience. It may seem a bit to players that, hey, we never reach Riot Mode, or I think that it always costs me too much UpX in order to find a treasure. These are all parameters that we are monitoring. We need some time to study the results of what actually happens in the economy. And then we make the necessary tweaks to bring these features into equilibrium. And that includes Riot Mode, that includes the prices for standard tier, that includes the time it takes, we allow people to find treasures in standard tier. And that includes also the prices that we award for that. So everything has to operate in an equilibrium at the final stages. We just need a little bit of patience for that.
Well put. Are there any further changes planned to treasure hunts, either in the immediate future or in, you know, further out somewhere?
Yeah, so we still have a couple of items left for treasure hunts 2.0, and these include the stealth and covert modes. So these will get introduced later on with shots or later releases that we do. And then again, there's no specific roadmap that we've communicated for later developments of treasure hunts. But one thing we're looking into is kind of like squad hunts, where one squad will compete against another squad to find a treasure. And the cool thing about this feature is that, again, it's a competition. So, right, so there's no there's no consequences to the economy. It's going to be head to head. You know, people can kind of like pay to spawn a prize and the better team collects it. So this will be a cool thing in the future. We do not have it yet set up into a specific sprint or a roadmap. So.
Right on. Let's do some questions that were submitted during our conversation, during our discussion here in the chat. Guys, if you submitted questions, we'll get to them now. We haven't been ignoring you. We've just been doing stuff according to you know, a certain order. So we'll start answering your questions now. Feel free to add them in the chat box. Let's start with a question by Nico. Will San Francisco always be the prime focus of Upland?
Well, so yes and no in a certain sense, right? It's, San Francisco, yes, is the first city, and we might try out new things here, new features in the game. And so that makes San Francisco always a little bit more important. However, we don't want to exclude it completely, because since we're location based, that means some of the new features just wouldn't make sense to launch in San Francisco, right? Some make sense to launch in New York, London, or wherever we are going to be in the future. And that means it's a clear yes and no, right? But I mean, of course, San Francisco, let's say short to medium term will still be, the focus of most of the activities.
And at the very least, it will be the prime focus of our hearts. Okay, so Brett asks, which is more likely to come first, property development or New York?
Yeah, we could probably with let's say 95% certainty say it's going to be New York.
Again, I want to maybe add to that. Again, property development also is going to be rolled out in chunks and small phases. So, for example, people may expect to see City Hall in there, sooner than later, right? But maybe not just yet start to develop their own properties. But again, so just a caveat there with New York. The specific time of the launch of New York also ties to certain economic targets that we kind of like set for ourselves to hit, which looks like we're adhering to. So, but before these are hit, we're not going to do it. So again, there's no like a real set time of like specific date when New York launches. We want to have the ability to do that. And once we reach our targets and decided that this is the time to do it in vanilla mode, that's when it's going to happen. So I think, yeah, Deb's assessment as 90% is probably, or 95% is sure. But the point is that the things are, things are agile. Things may change, and these types of questions, we're not going to commit to like the order of is that going to come before that.
Cool. Idan, let's stick with you for a second, because John wants to know, will you be able to reside as a mayor of more than one location at a time?
I'm not sure we talked about any concepts of mayorship. If we're talking about primary residence, maybe, or...
Maybe that's what he meant. Maybe
yeah,
John,
so primary residence will be unique per Uplander. So, at any given time, I, as an Uplander, I mean, not I because I don't play Upland, but any Uplander can determine one single place of residence, similar to like basically the real world. But I can decide that I want to make my primary residence now. If I own houses, maybe we look a year down the road where New York does have land development, and I own a house in San Francisco and in New York, I can decide which one I want to designate as my primary residence. Having said that, we still plan to cast features of why you would want to still utilize residential structures that are not your primary residence. So for example, if I live in San Francisco and I have to travel now to New York because I want to maybe acquire some properties or I want to engage with some businesses there or for whatever reason, I will still be able to use my residential addresses there also for the sake of the game.
Okay. Dirk, back to you. First of all, John Hodler, we hope that answered your question. If not, tell us, and we'll try to get you more clarification later on. Dirk, Joe Westrich asks, when will the first Upland Contributor Network partnership be announced? Do you want to answer him and also, talk about the UCN a little bit more, because, this was very much a product of your design? Tell us how you've been feeling with it and the launch.
Yeah, we just announced it yesterday. As I said, we're strong believers that, that not us, we have some ideas, right? But we also strongly believe that the community has great ideas in general, right? That's the reason why we said, okay, why don't we, somehow institutionalize that and create what we call the Upland Contributor Network, which is somehow the umbrella about different things we are going to introduce where actually Uplanders can contribute to the game. or help the game, to grow. There's different things what the contributor network should do in the going forward. So the first, let's say, program under this umbrella on Upland Contributor Network is called what we call broadcasters. And the basic ideas of broadcasters is, because what we've been seeing right now is that, and thank you guys for everyone who is doing that. We've seen really great YouTube videos. We've seen great blog posts on Medium, on Publish.io. I've heard now that also podcasts are coming, which is makes it super interesting, right? And say, hey, okay, these these Uplanders are really helping to the community to grow, and we also want to reward them. So that's why this broadcaster network, the broadcaster program, the idea is about, if you have a channel, or you create a channel on YouTube, you run your podcast and so on. So besides, and you help us, bringing more Uplanders into the game, we will reward you for that. And so besides, the normal referral reward you're getting on top per new payer who's coming into Upland. And what's very important, we have some kind of vetting process, because actually we will provide certain assets to those broadcasters they will be able to use in the game. Also us, Idan, myself, Elad, right? We're all going to be probably available for here and there for some live interview or whatever, right? Because we want to help you guys, kicking that off, of course. But it's important for us that the quality is also high, because at the end of the day, it's Upland, the brand, and we cannot afford, that, there's some, let's say, direct word here, garbage or whatever is out there, right? We say, oh, that's not really us or something. So there's in particular for the broadcaster, there's some kind of a vetting process, that we ensure, we get really high quality content. I mean, what we've seen so far is really great. And then you can talk about anything, right, in this content, right? It could be, for instance, some of them have done, walkthrough videos, Q&As. There could be also some international versions of it, right? Because, of course, we don't speak all languages here in Upland, the Upland team, right? We speak German, I do. So, but as soon as it gets into other languages, maybe some of them we want to just to distribute the content in different languages. And so on. And also we want to also acknowledge then the broadcasters also in the game. So we will have, they will get some special items, also they will be able to distribute to their viewers in the future. So that's adding things more and more, right? They can have, maybe run, maybe they have some kind of a special building, right? Maybe we combine it with the coffee shops, right? So people can go there and talk to the broadcasters themselves and so on. You have to have in mind, because Upland is going to be a really huge ecosystem. I know, even though, we are a team and today we still know what's going on, but, I want to be quite honest, right? Seeing everything, all the chatter which we have in the community is always also for us, we have only 24 hours a day to follow. And the way we see it is actually that people in the future, they will create their new things in the game we even ourselves might not be aware of in the beginning, right? And somehow we want the community also to regulate it, that these things are, always, because we have a very optimistic and positive view of the future, that people do good things also in a certain way, right? And we cannot define what's that in particular, but this is very important for us, that, there's something, that the community itself has a tool, to promote, to discuss, and all these things, which helps, to thrive in a very, healthy economy and community at the end of the day.
Awesome. And if you guys haven't
the question
yet...
was, sorry, the question was, yes, so we received the first application, sorry to interrupt you. So actually we plan on actually launching, so I will reach out to the first applications very soon, and probably have a short Zoom call or whatever to discuss some details. But ideally, you guys can go live, with the stamp of Upland, in a certain sense, in the next few days already.
I was just going to wrap up the question for you, but you did it perfectly. So.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have a question here from George Rubio. How about a secondary market where we can sell properties, business licenses, etc., while Upland still gets its cut, of course? I think possibly what he means is potentially a tertiary market, right? Because you get certain stuff from Upland the first time, and then you've got the Upland market inside the game itself. I believe George is referring to maybe like a third-party market on like another website or something like that, like most blockchain applications have. Do you guys want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So two things for that. First of all, when you see that today, when you are selling a property to another player, right, there is a fee, but that fee doesn't go to us. That goes back into the community and has to do with the economy at the end of the day, because we want to have a circulation of money in a certain sense. So we're not taking those cuts. And in the future, when we have business licenses which are sold between Uplanders, right, we also want, if there's a fee, that goes also back to the community, because that has, in order to have the velocity in there, what I mentioned earlier today. So that's going to be quite important. In terms of third-party products, we've announced it also in the roadmap. I mean, and we have to see, first of all, technical, and then, of course, again, regulatory things, right? So that means, we foresee that you can bring in third-party NFTs into Upland and trade them in a certain way. But how that's exactly going to look like, and we have to really look out, for the regulatory requirements here. But that's something, we envision we really would love to do if, if we get the green light on that side. Also technically also, but we already technically, and Idan, maybe you want to add to that, we already have a solution. Trading Upland goods on third-party markets is also something we would like to have, right? But here again, it's the same answer: regulatory and some technical things we have to overcome, but we don't want to exclude it.
Idan, did you want to add anything on top of that?
No, I think that pretty much covered everything. I mean, if people are interested more about about how we plan to manage, NFTs from the outside, we can talk about it. I'm not sure it's a primary focus of people here, but it's been discussed in the roadmap. And if people have further questions, feel free to post it in the chat.
I think maybe eventually, users of the Upland platform will get used to the idea of wanting to bring stuff into Upland, right? As opposed to taking it out, right? Upland is the place where we want the stuff to happen.
Sure. I think both is a valid request. We just need to, again, understand and reiterating what Dirk said, that, again, part of Upland's superpower is the ability to address huge markets, especially also in the US. And that requires that we adhere to very strict regulations. So everything, and again, that's a handicap, and that's what differentiates us really from a lot of other blockchain games. Like a lot of games now that are very successful in the blockchain field, if they wanted now to operate legally in the US, they would have a very, very hard time. So we saw that as an opportunity, and I think we're executing on that very well. It does have a downside, and that downside is that you have to adhere to regulation, and part of it is tough questions like, how can we enable people to bring out the digital assets outside of Upland while maintaining regulatory compliance? We'll get there. It's just very complicated things to solve, but as people are hopefully seeing, we are solving those. We are thinking about that day and night.
I think that they should remember that, this is in essence a blessing in disguise, because while it takes us maybe longer, relatively speaking, sometimes far longer, to come up with the correct solution to some of these requests, in the long run, which is what most of these people, I think, or most of our users and most of our community, is looking at, it's far more sustainable, right? Because we're doing things the right way. Doing things the right way takes time, but it'll last, much longer, hopefully forever.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the sustainability, it's also about the size again. So we didn't want to have that glass ceiling of only being able to address, crypto aficionados, which are measured probably in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands in the world. We want everybody to be able to play Upland, everybody. And that means about, again, taking away the complexities of blockchains, like everybody knows we do, and also adhering to highly regulated markets such as the US. So I think it's all a part of the big picture, and it's a very big picture.
Interesting question here from Cliff. Do you envision eventually explorers being able to enter a building and engage there with other users using audio rather than only chat, or doing all sorts of other interesting things there?
I think absolutely. It's not going to be soon. And again, the cafe business is the first thing to pop in mind. And again, cafes are going to be rolled out over time, over the short term. as a means to kind of like chat, interact, buy virtual goods. Later on, absolutely. I mean, this could be a fantastic development of the cafe concept.
And also on the topic of properties, Gibson asks, will larger properties be able to have multiple structures? Will it be possible to combine adjacent properties into one big property?
Okay, so the first part is yes. You can have multiple structures on a single property. Maybe not specifically at launch, but yes. And then with merging, this is a bit of a more problematic issue. So I don't see in the short term that we invest efforts into making merging properties possible. It doesn't mean that we won't get there eventually. So again, to sum it up, in the foreseeable future, we're not going to allow merging properties into one address.
Yeah, let's get the property development going in general first, exactly. Right? There's
for sure.
Long time to keep improving things and leave something for the long run, right? We can't deliver everything right off the bat. People get bored too easily. Dirk, this one's for you, I think. Joshua in the chat asks if we know how much inflation is currently in the game economy. Is that something that maybe we'll consider including in the economy report?
Yes, so Josh, we will be speaking about that, right? I mean, first of all, what is inflation? I mean, you can look only at the inflation of the currency of Apex, right? Or is it, generic? In real life, you usually have a basket of goods you're observing, right? And there's different things in there, milk and gas, for a car, and these kind of things are in a basket, and then you get a much more, let's say, for a real economy, the way how prices are developing. In our cases, we only have quotation marks that properties at the moment. We have more goods in the future. And then we create that kind of basket as well to observe how the real inflation is currently happening, right? And then in terms of prices, I mean, of course, we've been watching prices all the time. We have an upward trend in the prices, but this is purely market and demand driven, not just by the currency itself, right? So we distinguish between that. However, this is a huge field of research, and as you can imagine, central bankers around the world are dealing with all of that. So it's always something we learn and we are observing. But the inflation is pretty much under control. It's we achieve right now 5 to 10% annually, which is perfectly fine at this moment.
Maybe continuing on that same line of thought. So Benjamin here asks, if each new city gets its own collection, will we ever run out of UpX when thousands, maybe hopefully tens, if not hundreds of thousands of players are collecting on the collection rewards for, dozens, maybe hundreds of cities across the map?
Yeah, so again, this ties to kind of like a bigger economical question, but as Dirk iterated in the beginning, when we reach that phase, theoretically, and we don't know how long it's going to take us, the inherent inflation of earnings and boosts is going to change. So everything ties to the fact that of how much money do we have in the community pool, and how much can we afford, and how much do we want to kind of like to dedicate out of that for the sake of inflation. So it's all about, at the end of the day, making the decisions about what are those parameters that kind of like maintain a stable economy. And again, just to reiterate, maybe, I don't know if we covered this today, but we've covered it in the past. How can we, at the end of the day, take these decisions and delegate them out to a third party, like a real central bank eventually? So I hope that answers the question, but again, so Apex, again, currently there is a finite amount of Apex, but there is a process for minting, for injecting new Apex into the economy, and everything at the end of the day ties to the balance between the community pool and kind of like obviously the balances that players hold as their own Apex.
Yeah, maybe one thing to add right now. When we issued, you can all read that in the white paper. We have two pools, right? The community pool and the Upland pool, where actually money is taken out. Those pools have a limit on top. But however, when we see, that the overall, the number of players are growing, and it's clearly written also in the white paper, we have the opportunity to increase those two pools. So we can actually, we can add additional Apex to it, and that depends on the numbers of users and activity in the game. So we really want to tie, the inflation to economic activity.
And maybe it's worth mentioning again. A lot of people that play Upland, are very familiar with cryptocurrencies, and I don't think anybody needs to look at us as a cryptocurrency first and foremost. And our economic model is more similar to kind of like state-run economies versus what you would expect to see with, for example, Bitcoin or something like that. So. We strongly believe in, by the way, obviously that's something that Derek, and maybe Derek can speak better than me about that, because that's Derek's entire background with state-run economies, and that's where his PhD is from. But again, this is the model we envision for Upland, right? There is a central bank function, and the mission of that central bank is to keep the economy stable and heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Maybe one or two more to this. People have always asking. I think one is, is Apex going to be tradable, or is it, why is it not tradable, and so on. And that's exactly our core is really everything around those NFTs or digital goods, which can be sold. And if people really want to get money out, we'll have that way through fiat going forward. But it also implies that is it going to be Apex? And first of all, it's again regulatory, and we don't use it as excuse, but this is the way US is done. We cannot make Apex tradable outside of the game, because then we would really run into issues with the SEC here in the US and also in other jurisdictions, right? And maybe one day, once the economy is super huge, and when you take also real economy in real life, right? You can trade, can euros, you can trade dollars, and so on. Maybe there's an opportunity in the future that we have Apex, tradable, but I don't want to exclude it 100%, but only, if regulatory requirements are given, and we know it doesn't have to impact, it doesn't impact the economy, right? Because if you have only, a small number of players, and Apex would be tradable from that perspective, just picture, right? Then, somebody buys maybe 100 million Apex, and it takes it out of the system, and, then it has directly impact onto the game, and we want to avoid that. But let's say if Upland one day is available around the world, and if you have hundreds of millions of players maybe playing it one day, right? Then the effect is much lower from that perspective, and then you can discuss it. But I believe personally also that then the authorities will be also more relaxed, because they also understand, okay, that does not has big impact on their own economies. And that's how it's going to work. But for sure, Apex will not be tradable in the short or mid-term. That's I really want to exclude at this point.
Whoever wants more information about that, we actually had a detailed discussion about it in Telegram earlier today. So they can just go in there and look it up. I explained thoroughly what the problem is with trading Apex from the regulatory aspect. Outside of our own system, and all that information is available there. They can also ping me privately for that. Here's a question we have about governance, actually, apropos. So Jun Pnoy asks, will there be an opportunity to have local governance per district or community inside the game?
So again, our current plans are to have governance in locales that the most granular part of it is a city or a county, depending on the size of it. So the way we see it, governance, it ties around cities rather than neighborhoods.
Okay, and do we currently have any more information about that, or is that to come a little bit down the road?
Not yet, down the road, because again, we don't want to make that commitment before we have it fully structured and kind of like laid out and how it ties into the economy. We really want to be transparent. We want to communicate our kind of like our vision, where we're going, and which parts can. We don't take this lightly. I don't want to say, as people see now, right? We don't say like, hey, self-governance, people can decide whatever. No. Our objective is to make this a big thing, a success, and stable. And the things that we can delegate to self-governance, we want to do that. And these are parts of the things, like I mentioned before, again, deciding on, the designations of certain zones in the city to use, yeah, definitely something we can see and we can envision delegating to the community. But again, we really want to be careful about committing final details before we are 100% comfortable with them and before we have employed them into our models, into our simulations, etc.
For sure. Here's a really, really interesting question from Dan, and I like this question. Are we planning anything on the sports front? Use of arenas or stadiums in San Francisco, ticketing sales, owning a team, or concert halls for that matter? And if we're already on that topic, so what about the sports cards market? I mean, I'll go on and even elaborate upon that. Maybe partnerships with official sports clubs or branding. Go to
so
it,
Dirk,
guys.
you take the arenas because it's yours. I'll take the cards question.
Yeah, so we, of course, we would love, and that's something, one very famous football or American way soccer club has reached out to me. They want to discuss potential partnership. So we have to see what is possible, right? Of course, it would be awesome if, we could maybe, and, it's nothing concrete in the roadmap, to be honest, right? But if, we were just, fooling around this idea, right? People can buy maybe pieces of a stadium and own that and do, things together there. So yes, to answer that, we would love to get into the sports field, and that's also ties into our general strategy as a company, because we want to get real brands into the game. All right, we're talking to car manufacturers right now, these kind of things, which would make it much more like real life. In terms of particular baseball cards and sports cards, to be honest, I haven't thought about it, or we haven't thought about it really. What that could be. But if you have ideas, then feel free to drop an email or send us we're happy to take a look at that.
Yeah, but one thing maybe to expand here. So any collectibles that are utilizing blockchain technology for kind of like NFT governance, that was the entire vision of why we created the NFT galleries. So if we're gonna have now, I don't know, a card that's I don't know if you guys heard, but Garbage Pail Kids brand is gonna have a partnership with Wax, with the Wax blockchain. So definitely we see a vision where people that have acquired Garbage Pail patch cards or whatever, if Major League Baseball some at some point does a collectible on either Ethereum, EOS, or whatever blockchain, we want people to be able to bring those NFTs into Upland, create stores. So then maybe you'll be able to create the first baseball card store, right? So that would be an NFT gallery business. You would bring in those assets from outside of the blockchain into Upland. We are going to hold those in escrow. You can sell that to any Uplander, and then any Uplander that owns that kind of like a representative token on Upland will be able to then cash out that token and take the NFT back out to the blockchain of origin. So this was exactly the vision behind why we want to set up NFT galleries in Upland.
Okay, Dan kind of sharpened his question a little bit, and I think he was referring more to the use of the actual sports brands, like will there be some sort of licensing connection where Upland users and players can use official brands through us in the platform?
Yeah, that's what I said. First of all, please guys don't use that, right? As long as you don't have the rights to doing it, because that's people brands are very careful how their things are used. Yes, and of course, right? We wanna enable that. Right? However, these discussions usually take, unfortunately, time with those big brands. It's not that they're a small startup and can make a decision within a day. So, but definitely we want to get it into it, but however, cannot promise at this point.
But if they're working for some sort of international brand, they should talk to us, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you have great, ways into those brands, feel free, send us a Telegram note, and we're happy to use those connections and maybe get those brands into the game maybe quicker.
Will Upland work with car companies to allow us to drive around Upland? Dirk, I think you're just right.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, you have the game piece, you have the block explorer, but now we have to see if we bring in cars, how's that going to look like, right? One thing comes to mind, you have a racetrack somewhere and people can race and stuff like that, right? So, but we have to think about how exactly, that depends also a little bit about what the car manufacturers really want to do. We're currently in brainstorming mode with them, but again, big brands take their time.
Yeah, but one thing for sure, though, cars will be means for owners to transport between cities in the same way they would use either airplanes or trains. Obviously, a car would be slower than an airplane, but it can be still utilized to kind of like driving between cities if they are within a logical distance.
Xander just asked a question relating to that, directly, just asking for a little bit more clarification regarding the mechanics of traveling and flying. Do we have anything else to say about that at this point, or
yeah? First of all, this is coming really, really soon. So again, this will be a prerequisite before we launch New York. And the way generally it's going to work, you would need to get your Explorer into a terminal, into an airport terminal, in order to fly out. And there will be a dedicated interface kind of like that shows you the available costs per each owner's determination of the visitor fees. But each kind of like parcel would have limited availability. So each airport is gonna have a daily capacity for travel. Once you get to the airport and your block explorer is within discovery mode of the terminal, you're gonna be able to invoke a travel interface that will allow you to choose destination. At the first stage, obviously, the only destination available will be JFK in New York. And then that will trigger, there will be an airfare price. The price is going to be fixed initially, and that price is going to go back to the community pool. Once you've paid that price, you're going to invoke in air travel. It's going to be, again, it's not going to be like a 2-second sequence. There's going to be time required to reach from San Francisco to New York. And that's pretty much the gist of it. And again, very soon, people are going to be able to experience them for their
own. We'll just take a few final questions, guys, because we'll have to wrap it up here in a few minutes. But Idan, we have a anonymous question submission here from a possibly concerned Uplander. The question relates to collections. User mentions that you were talking in the past about how certain collections will be pre-written into the blockchain, right? So that we don't have any influence about them. And then we can, reveal them in the future. It's new content for the game, but people know that, we didn't have any control over it. So we weren't favoring, let's say, one neighborhood over another, or one thing over another. But the question is regarding the current No Valley collection in Genesis Week. User asks, doesn't this go against the pre-written concept of the,
Yeah, so first of all, there is no Valley collection. And again, only things we do, again, we as kind of like the game operator, have to create a lot of time like short-term engagement points, competitions, contests in that area. So there's no reason why, first, if you take No Valley operation that we're running today, there's no reason why that would bring the overall prices in No Valley in the long term, right? Because we haven't put in kind of like something to favor No Valley going forward after Genesis Week 2020. So this is an example of something that, again, we put in place a competition together. People can either participate in it or not, and it's totally up to the player. And this doesn't project a long-term effect on No Valley itself, other than the fact that more No Valley properties have been minted. So that's the way we look at it. We don't see in any way a long-term economical kind of like effect on this. So again, there is no Valley collection. There is no any boosts in earnings, et cetera, et cetera. There is no reason why prices would either inflate or deflate as a result of this contest.
Maybe they were talking about the temporary kind of collections for certain live events.
Yeah, so same thing, right? These are temporary collections. They get, as soon as the event is out, they are gone. They do not carry any yield boost for the properties that are matched in there. And kind of, so again, there is no long-term effect on the economy.
Yeah, it's more of a way for us to track, right, the results of a live event. It's not a collection that has a purpose.
And again, we constantly see, again, there's people rightfully complain, okay? Upland is in development mode. We do not yet have all of the engagement points that we imagine to keep people, engaged and playing in the game. And I think live events are a great way for us as an intermediary solution to give people the chance to compete, to play, to have a bit of fun. And we utilize whatever mechanic we can to make that possible without having long-term effects on the economy. So I hope, I don't know if it satisfies the answer to whoever was asking the questions, but this is the honest approach of what's going on.
I'm sure it answers it fine. And, this is something that's been raised in a legitimate way by users in the past. It'll continue to come up in the future, and, we'll answer it patiently and continuously. It's a legitimate concern, even though there's nothing to be concerned about, and we'll explain that as much as necessary whenever called upon.
But I want to also make sure that every time that we make these plans, such as Genesis Week or other live events, we definitely take that into consideration, right? We never want to interfere with the economy and the way it develops. So yeah, it's definitely on our minds with everything we do.
Last few notes here. June Pnoy asked, where are we most active in terms of chat, Telegram, or Discord? The answer is both, though Discord has really picked up in pace over the past few months, right? We used to have only a couple of users, and now it's in the hundreds, growing from day to day. So you can definitely find us in both places, June Pnoy, and we're there for anything you need. Xander asks, will there be an event for the sale of the other SFO New York City terminals? Whatever's left. I think we did all the SFO terminals, didn't we? Except the international one.
Yeah. So again, I think there may be a couple of parcels that are still available. They're just unlocked, and if people are interested, they can just travel there and purchase them. The international terminal is not up for sale yet, just for the plain reason that we don't offer international travel. Again, the purpose of these parcels was not to sell them. It was to enable travel between San Francisco and New York. When we open up a new city outside of the US, and we do not have any immediate plans to do so, then we will also enable international travel, and we will allow people to purchase the international terminal.
For sure. Let's take the last two questions, guys. Speaking of Genesis Week, when will the decision be made on who will get the raffle spot if there are multiple winners?
Elad, that's yours to answer.
Okay, so we'll post it. I guess, tomorrow's Saturday already. We could make you guys wait, but I guess I'll post it right after this. Right after this AMA, I'll organize everything and I'll post whatever needs to be posted, along with a few notes that are relevant on that matter. Okay, so just wait a little bit more, guys. And final note is from a Tiffany Russell, who asked if we've considered partnering with Backed. I'm not sure in what respect exactly, but Tiffany, if you have any ideas for us, either catch us on Telegram, Discord, or by mail, and we'd be happy to hear any ideas that you have. I think that's it for today, right? We're really on the minute in terms of the time that we've allotted for this AMA. Do you guys want to add any final notes? Dirk,
yeah, I want to take this opportunity, Elad, maybe to thank you personally for doing a great job with the community and setting all this up. This is phenomenal. We've been very busy this week. I know sometimes we take some time to answer questions, but I think we're so excited with what we're seeing, and it just makes us really passionate about the future, and just great.
Yeah, I second that, right? What would we do without Lars, right? Would be difficult for us, to manage, the community. I think it's doing a great job. I think in general, our community is very positive, and it's handled well. Maybe for you guys also to know, right? So how do we divide up the work between us? Obviously, Elas does everything, kind of related to community. So you can see, Idan is very, very much working on the product, and I'm, working more on, let's say, partnerships, marketing, and so on. So, when you have specific questions around that, maybe you want to funnel here and there some questions also in that sense is,
And again, maybe a big shout out again to our dev team currently in Mykolaiv in the Ukraine with Pavel and Vova and everybody, and our amazing design team, led by Jason. So everybody's been doing such a fantastic job that we're just like so stoked to work with all these talented people together. This is a great team here.
Awesome. There you have it, guys. Uplanders, you've been terrific. Thank you for joining us for this second AMA. We hope you've been enjoying Genesis Week and that you're excited about tomorrow's final results. We really appreciate you participating all week. And in general, we appreciate your support and investing your time and your resources in us. Thank you very much. And we will see you all next time. Thanks a lot, guys.
Life, liberty, and property. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Welcome, everybody. Laz here from Upland Community. Thank you for joining us today. What a spectacular week. This has been truly incredible. By far, one of the best weeks we've had at Upland. The entire community was truly terrific. We had some amazing events, amazing competitions, and now we're reaching the end of the road, at least just for this specific event. I think we want to thank everyone ahead of time for participating and for being a part of this huge thing that we tried to do, and celebrating basically our first birthday, which has been it's been a serious show, and it's been quite spectacular. So thank you, everybody. Thank you again. Before we get started, I just want to talk about the platform that we're going to be using for the drawing today. This is the same platform that we actually used for the Fly SFO drawings. It's called wheelofnames.com. And the reason I want to show it to you is because they have an FAQ page that looks like this. And on the FAQ page, you can actually get a lot of details about the project itself, about this kind of wheel spinning thing, and about the randomness function, which is based on JavaScript. So basically, this project is open source. All of the links are on that FAQ page. The project is on GitHub. You can kind of like analyze it and check the fairness and stuff. Obviously, we did that ahead of time. There shouldn't be any problem, but in the spirit of transparency, that's all there, and that's the reason that we choose to use this platform. So yeah, I don't want to hold you guys too long. I'm sure you're pretty excited. I say let's get this show on the road. The first thing that we're going to be doing is a pre-draw of the Wombat Pinata event. Okay, we had 3 winners there. Only one can have an entry into the prize drawings. So we're going to pull from those 3 now. I'm just going to go ahead and enter those 3 winners into the wheel. That was Mr. Lavix, Nipa, and Zidalgo Kids. And again, the person whose name comes up now is the one who is going to be entered into the prize drawing with the other 4 winners. So with no further ado, here we go. All righty, Nipa, congratulations. Fantastic. So you're going to be entered into the drawing now, into the prize drawing. Mr. Lavix and Zidalgo Kids, you've been fantastic. You got high scores on those other pinatas. Thank you so much for participating. We're sure you'll have better luck next time, but you guys have all been fantastic. So thank you very much. So now we're going to go ahead and enter Nipa here into the winners. And I'm going to go ahead and enter all of the winners now into the wheel. So we have Nipa, who just received the entry on behalf of the Wombat Pinata mini event. We had Ludo Mencio, who won the Genesis Hunt event. We had Thank Me Later, who was the winner of the Occupy Noah Valley event. Congratulations. Our Salesman of the Week winner was Mr. Monopoly. And the winner of the Hot Inaugurals mini event, the Lou Daddy. All right, so first of all, congratulations to all of you guys, because all of you guys, each of you are now gonna get something. The only question is what? So I'm gonna go over the prizes again, all right? Fifth place is gonna receive 10 EOS. Fourth place is gonna receive 25 EOS. Third place, 50 EOS. Second place, 100 EOS. And the grand prize, of course, is the Genesis property itself, which is gonna be super cool. We've tagged it for you with a little tag there, which you're able to see on the map. And we also want to go ahead and take this opportunity to thank Wombat Wallet for helping sponsor some of these prizes. So the first drawing is going to be for fifth place, 10 EOS. Here we go. Yay, congratulations, the Lou Daddy. You have won 10 EOS. I'm recording your winning now. Congrats. Great. Now we have 4 players left. Let's see who is going to take fourth place for 25 EOS. Mr. Monopoly, congratulations. I am recording you in the winner log. Up next, we have just 3 players left. So this is for third place for 50 EOS. And it looks like it's Thank Me Later. Congratulations, man. You have won 50 EOS, third place in the Genesis Week event. Thank Me Later. All right, and we have made it to the grand prize drawing. So what we're gonna do now, which is traditionally done in events like these, is the next person whose name comes up is actually going to win the grand prize, okay? So we're pulling the grand prize now, and whoever's left is gonna be the runner-up, which isn't so bad. You're gonna get, you know, a runner-up prize of 100 EOS. And yeah, let's get to it. Good luck, guys. Good luck, Nipa. Good luck, Ludomancio. Here we go. This is for the grand prize, the Upland Genesis property, the first property ever minted in Upland. Good luck. Nipa, congratulations. You have won the grand prize of Genesis Week. You have won the Genesis property, the first property ever minted in Upland. Truly, we hope it's going to be, it is a piece of history already, but we hope it'll be a piece of history that everyone in the world one day will come to appreciate. That prize is yours. Ludomancio, if you're watching, if you're here in the chat, or if you're going to be watching this later, not so bad. You've won the runner-up prize, second place for 100 EOS. Guys, you've all been so great. You know, we're going to get in touch with all of you winners for your prizes to discuss with you how you can collect. And that's it. We really hope that you enjoyed the Genesis Week event. It's been seriously an honor and a pleasure watching it happen, just watching the growth of the community and you know, seeing the steep direction upwards that Upland has been taking. On behalf of the entire team, thank you for your support. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for your participation. Congratulations to all the winners, and we'll see you at the next event, which will probably be not too far away. This is Laz, Head of Community. We'll see you soon. Thanks again, and have a great one.